Hello, very beautiful community. Jeffrey Sachs just got called a liar and the Putin propagandist live on Italian TV by Carlo Calenda as they debated events in Ukraine in 2013 and 2014. Now, what's interesting is that Sachs was stunned by this into a kind of silence, and he clasped his hands, lowered his head, and didn't speak for a few seconds. We're going to watch, then we're going to react, not just voyeuristically, but with a view to takeaways that are grounding for us as we try to negotiate a really apocalyptically scary informational environment. You know that I believe that Sachs is entirely capable of saying constructive things on certain political issues, such as the climate crisis, but that he has humiliatingly lost his way on Russia-Ukraine, to a point where he appeared a year or two ago on the Solovyov Russian propaganda show, a profoundly embarrassing thing for Sachs to have done. And it's not the only embarrassing thing he's said or done. So that's my view. Let's watch and react together.
You don't know how much the United States
Non sa quanto gli Stati Uniti hanno pagato per il rovesciamento di Yanukovych. Ero lì, l'ho visto. Io sono stato portato in piazza Maidan dalle persone che hanno pagato, sono stato in giro, mi hanno spiegato, abbiamo dato 15.000 a questo, 20.000 a quest'altro. Sta dicendo che non è successo, che non l'ho sentito?
Sì, penso che lei sta mentendo. Assolutamente.
Sì, sta chiamando un bugiardo?
Io penso che lei fa propaganda putiniana.
I'm stunned.
Sono scioccato, francamente.
È la mia
You
opinione.
call me a liar?
Sì.
Mi ha chiamato un bugiardo?
Però, professor Sachs, professore, il dibattito in Italia è molto acceso, a volte troppo, però diciamo, dica la sua, non si preoccupi, abbiamo superato.
No, è acceso, ma è veramente scioccante. Chiedo scusa.
Okay, so let's do the basics first. Somebody in Sachs's position could be lying, they could be being untruthful without lying, and they could be wrong without being untruthful, and they could be telling the truth. They could be right. So I'm going to peel away the last possibilities. We've just got three. Do I think Sachs is lying? No, I really don't. In the sense that lying means that you say things that you know as you're saying them are not true. If anything, what would have happened after this is Sachs may have gone for dinner, and his processing of this wouldn't be, I got called out for my lies. It would be, they challenged me. I told the truth. They accused me of being a liar, and that is incomprehensible to me. How can they do it? I mean, imagine they disagree, fine. But it's inconceivable that they call me a liar. This Calendar guy seems to be articulate and able to engage soundly. So how can he possibly just call me a liar like that? I can't even imagine how that sits in his head. What is it all about? I'm in shock because I don't find I have a kind of intelligibility type access to what I experienced. I don't understand what just happened. I don't understand what happened in Calendar's head. That's Sachs's processing. So therefore, we're left with two possibilities. Sachs is wrong, or that he's being untruthful. And I'm going to suggest that Sachs isn't just wrong, he's being untruthful without lying. So what's being untruthful? Well, imagine that I am in a primitive society and that they send me to the river to check if there are fish in the river. I get to the river and don't see any fish. So I persuade myself that there aren't fish in the river. But I never cultivated my skills to look for fish in the river well. I didn't try hard enough to look for the fish in the river. And there are other things going on in my head that sort of dissuaded me motivationally from really going out of my way to make sure about the fact of the matter here. So I've come back to my community sincere, but not accurate. I didn't try to get the world right. I'm sincere, but I didn't try to get the world right. And maybe things were happening in my head that obstructed me from trying to get the world right properly. Now, there is a basic move that's essential to understand here, which I discussed in more detail in a main channel video on why the alt left in the West often engages in Putin fancy. And I'll link that video up at the end if you haven't seen it on the main channel. But there's a basic problem that Sachs has here, and that is that his eviscerating critique of US imperialism is still a complement to US imperialism in reverse, because it obsessively projects a degree of US power and control that isn't actually present. Where is Ukraine's agency, Mr. Sachs? Where's Russia's agency to do various things, including malign things that are not just a product of sort of a terrible projection of US imperialism that forces Russia into doing what it's doing? There's a tendency to understate the agency of smaller countries, two smaller countries in this case, Russia and Ukraine. Let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. What's the correct tilt to have about what was happening in Ukraine in 2013 and 2014? Well, the West was certainly strategically keen to tilt Ukraine westwards. This was done not just via diplomatic pressure, but by various kinds of funding of Ukrainian civil society, of Ukrainian politics, by USAID, by the European Union. There was also, of course, the famous Nuland phone call, the leaked tape of it, which shows what? I think it shows that the West was actively assessing and gaming scenarios, that the West had preferences about who it wanted to see in the post-Yanukovych government, and the West tried to steer the situation and to influence the situation. But in the end, the right narrative, contrary to what Sachs proposes, is that it's Washington trying to steer events it doesn't control. It's not Washington's manufacturing events, So there is preference, there is meddling, but there is no orchestration or, operational control of events. So fundamentally, it's Ukraine did it. It's not America did it. And that's unavailable to you if the images that animate you psychologically are all about how do we contain, how do we put an end to inappropriate projection of US imperial power. But that means that you collapse your view of Ukrainian domestic politics, your view of Kremlin dynamics, your view of Russian aggression into a puck that has a kind of a role for you in US domestic debates and US domestic culture wars about the malignity or benign nature of US imperialism. It's a completely American-centric view. It's as American-centric as the worst versions of the imperialism Sachs tries to critique. Now, what on earth is wrong with his reaction? If I go on TV and I say something about, I don't know, how Putin is bad, and somebody calls me a liar, I'm not going to clasp my hands and lower my head. Even if I'm discussing a very sensitive topic, let's say the politics of my illness, the politics of myalgic encephalomyelitis, or the politics of long COVID, which I've got recently. And I say, look, a lot of people have microvascular damage post-COVID, and I'm one of them. And somebody says, no, that doesn't happen. You're a liar. That might be hurtful to some people, actually wouldn't be hurtful to me because I've got a thick skin. But it's inconceivable for me to just lower my head, clasp my hands, and go silent. I'm not 12. So what's up there? What is this narcissistic shock about? Is that what it is? Is it a kind of a narcissistic shock about, being publicly challenged by a seemingly responsible actor about one's sincerity? And is it authentic, or is Sachs putting it on, or is it something in the middle? What I would say about this is that even though Sachs is being untruthful rather than lying, it's actually healthy for him to get called out as a liar in public, because it stands an above zero, but not much above zero chance of physiologically shocking Sachs into questioning some of the slumbers he has fallen into on the Russia-Ukraine question. Slumbers that are inconsistent with his level of experience and his level of intelligence. There's a kind of a farcical outsourcing of serious engagement with the issues to into a kind of debate about the dangers of American imperialism. It's a domestic American debate, and because that's what Sachs ends up doing, he dramatically underestimates Ukrainian agency and by extension Russia's agency too. Lots left, talk soon.